Hey, so this is Ransom1690 back here with another video, and today I'm gonna kind of talk about this, manga I have been reading, because I had tried to, well, first I tried to watch the anime like way back in 2014, and I just kind of blew it off because at the time I just judged it based on how it was looking, and it's called Gunslinger Girl, and it's a older anime slash manga. And at the time, like my whole mindset was I watched one episode, and then I thought, this is just some typical excuse my what I'm typical lolly type shit, lolly girls with guns, this and that. So I blew it off for a while, and I hate to put it that way, but that's just how I judged it at the time. And I made some attempts to get back into it, like maybe about a year or two ago, except I decided to try to read the manga because I heard that the manga had a more developed story than the anime. That's typical with a lot of mangas. Usually the story will be different from the anime and it'll be more true to the source material. But I mean, even though I was just kind of more open to, I guess, the narrative of it, I, for the life of me, just couldn't stay really engaged in it. And I think a reason why is because, around the time I had started trying to get back into that manga, I was coming off of stuff like Soul Eater, Hooky, which, I mean, that's really not a manga, that's more of a web comic, but, it's still a good story. It's kind of in the anime style, but it's just has its own unique cartoony art style, and then around that time I had started getting into The Promised Neverland. All good mangas, in my opinion, and just coming off of stuff like that because my taste, it's more, or for a while it's been more on like the fast-paced action type side of things. But I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older, but I've recently started trying to get into more stuff that's slow paced, that just kind of takes its time and actually lets the characters develop, which, I mean, the media, the names that I mentioned too, like, they do that too, but it's like with Gunslinger Girl, it's just much more like majority of it character driven. I mean, as the name implies, there is action behind it, but that's not the main focus of the material, which is why I think I just couldn't get into it before, because I just wasn't used to that kind of, slow paced in between type of, way of storytelling. But I made another attempt last night to get back into it. I started from chapter 1, and I'm much more engaged in it this time. And the story, let me get into the story real quick, because this video, I mean, it's not just gonna be about that, but that has a lot to do with exactly why I'm making this video, because the story behind Gunslinger Girl, it's a story about these girls, who were, I mean, each one of them, they had kind of like a tragic event in their lives. And I think one was brutally taken advantage of in front of her dead parents, and then she was left for dead. Yeah, it's tragedy like that. Another one, it was alluded to that she was, because, I mean, it's not explicitly stated, but it is alluded to that she was kind of trafficked in some kind of, ring or some type of stuff. And I'm just gonna leave it like that. And then the other one, there is another one who just, I guess from birth, her limbs didn't work. She couldn't move her body real good. And so what happens is it's this organization that takes, I guess, broken kids in and gives them artificial limbs and, working body parts and all of that type of stuff. But there is a catch to that, because these same kids are then made to go out on dangerous missions and fight a terrorist organization group. And then there's this whole thing where it's like this anti-terrorist, faction. Like, they're putting these kids on all types of drugs. They're sedating them, or kind of like, mind controlling them, to be loyal to a handler, and to do actually, like, do what they're being tasked to do. So it's like a type of conditioning that they're put under, to where they're given false, loyalty, I guess you can say, to the group and to whoever is their caretaker in a way, and one of the things I noticed, it sounds real fucked up, but that's exactly the point, because one of the things that I noticed about a lot of good media or artistic media, is that a lot of good artistic media, they do have things of tragedy in it, and just even with some of the artwork that I like to look at, they follow themes of tragedy, and they're all realistic to what you would possibly expect from what would happen in real life. And I think that's also what makes this world that we live in really tragic, is because in a lot of good stories, now not all of them, I'm gonna say that real quick, all of them, I mean, you can have stories that are good, that is really optimistic and that's positive and doesn't have a theme of suffering to it. But a lot of other good artistic media, whether it's movies, books, manga, whatever, is they always have things of tragedy to it. And I recently revisited a video I made last year, scrutinizing, or I guess slamming, Hayao Miyazaki for what he kind of was saying about the animation industry, when he said that, people but don't like to take inspiration from real life. or from the world around him. And I still disagree with that take, because how else would you be able to tell these type of stories unless you had a good grasp on how messed up the world really is in reality? You see what I'm saying? And when just hearing the stuff that I had already mentioned about Gunslinger Girl, you can't write a story like that and not have a good understanding of how suffering in our world works. And when I was reading Gunslinger Girl last night, again, it didn't catch my attention maybe 3 or 4 other times I tried to read it, including that one time back in 2014. But I just found myself more engrossed in the story last night. After I decided to really just take my time and really pay attention to, the conversations that were being had, how characters interacted with each other, and just really appreciating the narrative that was being laid out. And when I did that, I was just hooked for this reason, because of how real it felt, and just just thinking about the way they present suffering. It's a realness to it that you can just unfortunately relate to within our real world of things. Just how these girls how they go through tragic events, and how this organization is now just using them for their own means. And it just really it really had me just kind of feeling some type of way. I think I believe it's either chapter 4 or chapter 5 where one of the girls and the handler, they just died, and it's speculated that they was murdered by a terrorist group or caught off guard or something like that. But then it comes out that that's spoilers, so I'm not gonna really get into that. For those who haven't read it, you manga watchers and manga readers and anime watchers out there, but it's it's a scene in between that where there is another handler with, I guess, his kind of cyborg girl or whatever, and it's the thing about these girls is they're still real people. Yeah, they've been cybernetically enhanced, but it's made clear throughout that they're still fucking just adolescent girls. They can't cook, they don't really know much of anything outside of their conditioning, and each one of the handlers handle them different. And it's some try to have a more human connection with them, and then others just see them as tools. So it's this one guy, it's this one scene where he was talking to this reporter or this investigative analyst, because it's a lot of political shit going on within their faction that they try to keep under wraps and stuff. So it's like, this investigator was kind of just sizing up, okay, like, how are y'all doing business? Was y'all able to, let this kind of thing happen? Are y'all sure that using cybernetically enhanced girls is really a smart thing to do? And then this handler, he just grabs this girl, like his girl, by the fucking collar, and just kind of starts talking about her like she's a fucking, like a thing, like how you would maybe grab a product off the shelf. And he was like, well, you see here, like, just our cyborgs are state of the art. They're just going through exactly what makes them work as products to be used. And just, it's a real, you would consider that to be an insignificant thing, but it's like, just looking at that, it's like, bro, and that's the thing, man. It's like, how can you write something like that unless you are able to understand it's just exactly the level of fucked upness things can really get in our reality? And it's crazy when you think about it, because, like, again, like, a lot of what we enjoy, a lot of entertainment, it has themes of tragedy, even the type of artwork, like, again, that I like, I've always considered Osuka Demizu to be one of my favorite illustrators, and just her work has lots of themes of tragedy in it, where just stuff happens they happen, you just see just the bad stuff that happens to what she illustrates. And what makes it so believable is that it's presented in a realistic way. Now, obviously, again, the settings and all of that, it's not realistic, but just the things are. And I think, like, that's what really makes it stick to you, is just when it's able, that this kind of stuff is able to be presented in a very realistic way. So even if the medium, or even if, like, the characters, or they're not realistic, but the way they act, the way they behave, would be realistic to what you would see or experience in our reality. Now, that's not to say that every story that has tragedy in it is good, because a lot of them, like, they just kind of do too much. There was another time where I had tried to watch Baki, the Grappler, the new one, I guess, like, not the older one, but the newer one that was kind of popular at the time on Netflix. I had a friend try to turn me on to that, and I just, like, couldn't get into it, because they were just doing too much. Just the level of violence and the just how people were being injured. It was just over the top. You could, in my opinion, it was more shock, just to shock you than to actually connect you to a feeling or to make you actually become engrossed in the story and actually empathize with these characters, which takes talent to do, but it's like with Gunslinger Girl, just the way they present like their tragedy, it's not over the top, it's real, which is what makes it more tragic. It's not just grotesque, gory bullshit that's just happening every other scene. You will get maybe a backstory of one of the characters, and then they show you just through how they live and how they interact with one another, and like even like just through dialogue, just how fucked up their situation is, like just how fucked up the whole thing is in general. And that's what makes it tragic, is when it's just done in a realistic way that you're just able to feel it. And like going back to Posuka Demizu, like just when she illustrates tragedy, like it's done in a way where, not like Baki the Grappler is, like it's done in a way that it's almost like condemning the action, like it's showing it for the horror it really is. You're not supposed to like the scene that you're seeing in front of you, which makes it tragic, is like it's actually shown as tragedy. It's not shown just as an excuse for entertainment. And so, I mean, she draws a lot of, upbeat, positive stuff too, which is when you come across a illustration where something not positive is happening, it hits more because of, like, again, just how it's portrayed in it, versus something like Baki the Grappler, where it's like every other scene, a character is getting their face punched off or their limbs bitten off, or just some over the top shit, and then they're getting their brains they're getting their brain taken out or something, and somehow they're still able to keep fighting or standing like that. I don't feel anything from that, because it's just being done just for the purpose of showing grotesque entertainment, in my opinion. But it's like, just thinking about how, not Baki the Grappler, Baki sucks ass, but with what I'm talking about, and a lot of other good stories, it's like, in order to write those kinds of stories, you have to have some kind of understanding of suffering in our reality, which is what makes being born here so tragic, because we antinatalists, we talk about suffering and how much it sucks and how horrible it is just being born into a world like this, but yet the best entertainment or the best media or stories that a lot of us like to enjoy, it comes from someone's understanding of the suffering that we condemn. And it's like, it's a fucking tragedy, like when you think about it, because it's like, if there was no suffering, then would we still have engrossing stories like this? And I started thinking about that last night. Now, I want to get something straight. I'm not saying that, oh, suffering is a good thing because it brings us good media or good entertainment. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that, it's something to really think about. Just how much of a double-edged sword that our existence is, that for an artist or a musician or like an author to come up with a good story or a story that many will be engrossed in, that they must understand the natural way in which our world works, in the good and the bad. And that's why I believe personally that it's better to not have been born, because it's almost like it's a fucked up, just I don't know how to put it. Like it's kind of just like a, I really don't know how to put that. I mean, it's kind of like a fucked up coincidence when you think about it. Like, it's confusing. But, I was looking at a review about Sailor Moon last night. And it's like a lot of the people who was talking about it, they were like, yeah, like, oh, like it's boring. Like, the plot, it's too slice of life-ish, or it's just too predictable. It's like it's not a lot of, well, I'm not going to say it's not a lot of deep emotions that people can relate to, but it's more on the, I guess, magical upbeat side for a lot of people's taste who like probably watched it when they were kids, which goes back to my point. Like, a lot of these deep stories that we like to enjoy, it like, it's based on things of tragedy, and just I don't know, like, it just really got me thinking, because it's like we don't enjoy suffering in our life, but we enjoy the experience and the realisticness of it being told through a cartoon or through an anime or a movie even. And it's kind of just weird just thinking about that, but like, one of the things that I appreciate with the stuff that I like to read is that it does have a level of respect for the themes of suffering. It's not like fucking Baki the Grappler or another manga that I recently dropped because it was like, that one was also doing too much. Like, I had recently tried to read Elfen Lied and I fucking dropped it for all the same reasons that I dropped Baki. Like, it was just violence, over the top violence for the sake of violence, and on top of it having other issues that I'm not gonna get into. Just they were just doing too much in that one as well, so I dropped it and I'm not going back to it. But it's like for like stuff like Gunslinger Girl or like Hooky, even though that's more cartoonish, that's more like it comes off as more bright and cheery. There is themes in that relates back to the Salem witch trials. When someone would get accused of being a witch, then they would get burned at the stake and stuff like that. It just, even Soul Eater that explored suffering in its own way. Krona and his abusive relationship to his mother, Medusa, and just stuff like that. And it's like, in order to write stuff like that, like you have to have an understanding of just how shit our world really is. And it's crazy just thinking about it. But man, I don't know, man. And I want to reiterate, I'm not saying that, because we have all this good media that's based around suffering. Well, not all of it is around suffering, but a good the meat of like what would engross us has the theme of suffering in it. I'm not saying because we have media like that again, suffering in our life, it's a good thing, like what some other people would try to say, suffering is good, it makes you stronger, all of that bullshit. But it just really got me thinking just about how confusing it is existing like this. Just which is why, man, I think it would have just been better not to be born. Because when you think on this level, you have to confront the reality that of if our world was to change, if there was no suffering, then you would have to come to terms with the reality that a lot of stories that we like to enjoy, that a lot of media that we like to indulge in, may never exist again. Those stories may never be told again because there wouldn't be any inspiration to be drawn from it. So existence in itself, just thinking about it in that way, like it's a confusing mess. But it's just crazy. But y'all tell me what y'all think about it, and I'll get back to y'all with another one real soon.